You always say bad things about me. Yes.
Just off the top of your head, do you remember the name of the file for Wizards of the Coast permissions? I'm writing for permissions to run the Adventures League class, and I want to say we already have Wizards permission. We're just asking you for yours.
Yeah, I've got a bunch of templates on my laptop from the different ones. I can, if you want to, after Tolkien Society, I can send it to you.
That works. I'll wait.
I got to start. Your audio's looping terribly, John. I'm starting recording, starting streaming. John, your audio's looping like crazy.
That's because I have 3 rooms talking simultaneously.
Okay, do you not have headphones?
I'll get them.
Thank you. All right. Hello and welcome to the Tolkien Society. I'm Hawk Robinson, president and founder. Our monthly Saturday, third Saturday of the month society meeting on April 7, 2021. We've had some recent hardware, studio, and other software upgrades and Windows update. Boo, boo, I say. But here we are, a few minutes late, but we're and we have some people joining us remotely by Jits. And joining here in our Spokane show, we Secretary Supreme
Brian Huseland, yes.
Where you want to be talking?
Yes, I am Brian.
I'll move it around so that you.
I am that person.
Saluting him.
Yes.
The camera. The camera.
So, and to my left is.
I'm Richard Baldwin. I wandered.
Adopted him.
Left ever since.
We've been feeding him. We've
We
had
are
him.
so glad. We are so glad to have him. We are.
And to his left.
Corey? I'm not looking at the right camera here today. Anyways, I've been coming here for quite a while now. I think, what, 4 or 5 years?
Oh, that's right.
And joining us remotely over Jitsi from the central southern farthing of Washington.
The desert.
I thought that was this place.
No, this
Oh,
is 4.5 inches of rain a year.
Yeah.
We just turned on our irrigation yesterday.
Ah,
It's going to be 80 degrees today.
oh boy. Introduce
boy.
yourself there.
I'm Chris Cooperstein, member, and this is future Tolkien member Wayne Cooperstein.
Welcome, welcome. And
I come from
also
the
from
rainforest,
Spokane region, the one with the gray beard.
Better?
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear without all the echoing.
Thank you.
So introduce yourself.
Good afternoon. My name is John Wilker, Vice President, co-founder of RPG Research, occasional step into Tolkien Society, and Game Master for Tolkien Mute.
Welcome, welcome. Glad to have you here. All right. Did we have last month?
I don't know. I wasn't.
I think last month just everybody
You get the
forgot.
award.
I think we just have a
Did
move.
somebody
Just
get a hold
nobody
of
showed it.
Anthony?
I don't think
I
there is one.
wondered. There was silence on the.
Because I
in
was
the
doing
ether.
120 hours a week at
You
Learning
were.
Night.
I was out of town.
Yeah,
and
and
you weren't here. But
I
you,
wasn't feeling
You
real
didn't
well
miss
that
anything
day.
then, apparently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
And
everything went okay.
Chris, did you show up? And was anybody here?
I logged in and no one showed up.
My
I
apologies.
gave it
There's
I
the
gave it
confirmation.
Just hanging out on the
15
internet.
minute- The 15-minute college rule and,
Yep. My
yeah.
apologies. My bad.
No worries. So therefore, I, as your noble and evil secretary, have no notes to read. However, I could read the February meeting notes. No,
Sure.
I actually do have notes from.
Might as well read the February one. That was the last meeting.
Yeah.
Has it really been since February? Man,
Yes.
I feel
Yeah, because
bad.
March is the one we missed.
Missed March. March, the magnificent.
Our marching orders.
Right. All right. So on our website, tolkienscholars.org, you can follow along on the meeting notes like
As I was
from anywhere.
saying, did
Should
anybody
do.
get a hold of Anthony?
I did.
And
Okay.
he said he wasn't coming.
I think maybe you have February meeting notes, but I didn't get them to the web. Doesn't help.
Right, no problem.
I'm down to 100 hours a week. And if all goes well with the demos for the next 3 weeks, I might get down.
Okay.
We'll see. And I might be able to.
Okay, so I am from February. Yay! Huzzah! And magic powers. Okay.
Forcing us to remember stuff we don't even really care about.
But
Sorry,
you must
that's-
pretend.
I must pretend.
That's
fake
too
it
much
well.
honesty.
As Seinfeld
Right.
says, that's a lot of interest that you have to show as a
Remember-
doctor.
Only when multiple people talk, it's just optional.
True.
Sorry.
Try to take turns.
You be funny, then you be funny.
No,
Yeah.
I'll try to calm down. I promise.
TMH.
All right. Tolkien Society meeting notes from February 2021. Hawk welcomed the group. I read the notes from January. Sarah Zama from Italy invited. She was invited to kind of share about her project that she's been asked to do for a Tolkien Society or rather a not a Tolkien Society, I believe, but her group in Italy, and she'd been asked to summarize the Silmarillion in a 15-minute video. So she was asking us for advice. How do you summarize the Silmarillion in 15 minutes or less? So that was an interesting discussion. Hawk's suggestion was to make sure to include the Song of Creation. Don't just jump over that and treat it like a preamble, but instead make sure.
Literally foundational.
Right. Yeah, stuff happened. Exactly. So, and then that'd be Anthony. Anthony suggested using the letter to Milton Waldman. I believe is that letter 131. Check me on that. But where Tolkien writes a brief letter about the Silmarillion and his cosmos, Middle Earth. And
Brief?
I thought it was a note.
Brief?
it was, I think, 10 pages long, but I'm not sure.
No.
There you go. Yes. P.S. Post trip. I mentioned a word cloud. It'd be interesting to see if you took all the text from the Silmarillion and did a word cloud on it, what would pop up as the most occurring.
I could make that.
Yeah. And then macro to micro, also the idea that you've got a big story that you need to bring out, but also include small stories. Because it is such a overwhelming kind of masterpiece and kind of historical sweep that in fact you need to include Beren and Luthien, because Beren and Luthien is one of the best stories. My humble but accurate. So that was Sarah's asking for our help on that. I'm not sure how much we helped Sarah, but I did check in with her recently and said, how is it going? And she said that it's going very well, and she'll let us know how it goes. So maybe by next month. Also, the next point in the notes was that Tolkien Moot XVII, was known as 17, is this July 17th. Oh, did you plan that?
No, that's just Saturday of every month. Of every
How handy. So
17,
literally, Tolkien Moot 17 will be on July 17th, so who can forget that one? In 2021.
I can man.
And the title or the topic for Tolkien Moot, Golden Age of Numenor, Tolkien Moot. Could you just briefly, for those of you who are not as familiar, Hawk, just say a brief synopsis of what is Tolkien Moot? I have some people that are not
right.
players.
It is annual gathering of fans of all kinds, fans of scholars of Tolkien and since 2005, and it besides Tolkien Society meeting with special guests and speakers, authors. Lots and lots of Tolkien-based board game, role-playing, etc. All have to be Tolkien-based because we're unlike Other Minds magazine, other hand. We're expanding the experience of the creation, Tolkien's universe, through the gameplay. Other hands through art and music and poetry and all of that expand upon that. And so it's a celebration of through interactively.
Thank you, Hawk. That's a great. We'll come back to this actually in a little bit as we talk about exciting developments going on with role playing systems and an update on Tolkien. Okay, so but we did say in the notes that there is already a RSVP link available for Tolkien Moot, and a panel is now, it says it is being formed for Tolkien Society. We do have a panel, and I am happy to say that we can confirm that we have for our panel this year, hosts of the Prancing Pony podcast, which is Alan Sisto and Sean Marchese. They will be joining that.
And I did up
wonderful, wonderful, and actually, it's worthwhile going on to the PP website. The Prancing Pony podcast is actually doing its own online moot.
All right. Send me the link for that
in May. Yeah.
Is the Numenor cycle because of the movies that are coming out? I mean, not the movie, TV shows.
Everybody kept asking. So the first 3 Tolkien were the Numenor cycle that I did, and anybody who missed the first Tolkien moot not experienced about how much fun our Numenor cycle was. And asking for it. Tolkien moot vote for what the theme. And so everybody voted last year that several year long cycle.
Gosh, I wish I had been.
Well, that's exactly. If you show up and participate, you get to say.
It's not too late for you, my friend.
Yeah, so it goes from 8 a.m. to 10.
Right.
We shall embark upon the golden age of Numenor. But it is worth mentioning that last year we had a great panel for Tolkien Moot. It was, and
you can watch that video on our youtube.com/Tolkien Scholars YouTube.
Absolutely. We had to modify things a little bit just because of a number of factors go to right now, but essentially because of 2020, that kind of explains everything. We didn't end up having a planning for a virtual kind, but we didn't end up being able to do that. But we did have the panel discussion on the rise of Numenor, second piece.
Right, and for gaming for this rise of Numenor,
exactly, because it really is tied into the Golden Age as well. There's that whole both. Okay, moving on. And I'll just briefly scoot over this because I know we're going to talk more about this soon. But the One Ring second edition is indeed coming out. We talked about how it was on Kickstarter, the discussion. We'll come back to that. And then we discussed a Malorn article. Malorn is quarterly publication of the Tolkien Society, Great Britain, world, and so the Malorn is this really article specific about painting that Tolkien did about being in Switzerland, being in the mountains, how that very some parallels between experience, how that gave him trying to describe the mystic. Anyway, that's worth.
So that big snowstorm that's in the kind of like built from the Alps, is that what
I think he experienced something, not all of them, but yes, I think he really points where they had to be careful not to fall because of it being, these kind of scary moments.
Anybody ever mapped all the places
Somebody
Nobody
must
ever made
have.
a map of
I'm
yeah.
amazed he
Everybody's
did.
done Middle Earth travel.
And he didn't.
But I wonder if
tra-
they-
Yeah, he,
Well,
mean,
it started
he
with
went to Italy.
Bloemfontein.
I know he
Started
went
with
to Italy.
Bloemfontein, though.
Yes,
And then he
South
went to
Africa.
different parts of the UK.
Did he ever come to America? I don't think he.
Spoke to him all the time.
Well, I know.
But
I know
Ireland
C.S.
and
Lewis
he
came
went a
to
lot of
America,
places.
but I
He
don't think.
Yeah.
I don't think
It would be
Tolkien
interesting to
did.
see if anybody's ever mapped Tolkien way.
That's a good question. I'll try to put that in the notes.
He hated Disney too much.
Yes. Shall not go.
And we're starting to realize why.
Shall not go to the land of Disney. He said.
Oh, you know, Disney tried to make
Okay, let's move on. So then Anthony referred to the Ammon Hen, which is the kind of monthly publication society, and there was a specific article on Hobbit origins that he recommended. So we talked about that, and then we read letter 181. Been reading through the letters for the last 10 years, I think, and so letter 181 from Letters of J.r.r. Tolkien. There was a discussion of change and elves. How do elves relate to change in the world? Talked about the Lord of the Rings being how you look at things being more elf-centric and things that are hobbito-centric. Thank you. Hobbito-centric. So
I
we
was
talked
thinking
about
you
that.
should just
A quote from Elrond's counsel. Quote, such is oft the course of deeds that move the wheels of the world. Small hands do them because they must, while the eyes of the great are elsewhere. Lord of the Rings being mostly a hobbit-centered tale, but there's elements of the legendary elf
The
centered.
wise did not see what was coming.
Yeah, right. And then
upon reflection.
yeah, exactly. It going on this macro level, but what about the farms? What about on a local? That's what I was thinking about when you look at picture number one. Is what about this bombed out house, and what about the people who live there? We don't know often about them. Finally, the great man versus the ordinary folk, kind of Tolkien embracing each at different. And then our next meeting, March 20, 2021. Sadly, did not happen. Such are the notes submitted by yours truly.
Thank you. Here, here.
Oh,
May
Pshaw.
the hair in your toes never fall.
That's good because the rest has started to.
I don't know what
Since
you're
you're
talking
mentioning
about.
halflings, something we do over on our research side. Start out with a little humor. So these are halfling jokes. Hobbit. And of course they're gaming related, so I'll let you know if one of them's off color.
Off-color jokes about halflings.
Why don't halflings jokes?
I don't know why.
John, don't say because you've already heard these.
Always-
There you go. There you go. Got it.
Don't bring Richard into this. He knows all the bad.
Carry on.
I saw a big gathering of halflings. A lone hobbit in the middle of it. Tolkien minority.
Oh,
Tolkien minority.
Yes, because halflings, of course, are the generic term. Hobbits are not. Ouch. Ouch. Give us more.
Did you hear about the polymorph scroll? Only turned halfling? Or change. Polymorph is a spell that turns.
Short shame. Oh.
Why shouldn't you hire a halfling?
I don't know. Why?
'cause he can't-
The stakes are just too high.
I thought it was because it would be half baked.
Why are halflings good folks?
don't look at me.
They don't look down on people.
These are such groaners.
Whole book is.
Get out the tomatoes.
Is this technically bad jokes?
These are role-playing gamer jokes. The Hobbit section. Halfling
Yes.
section. Why don't halflings ever get?
Oh, why?
No criminal would stoop so low.
Oh.
All right, this one is no, the rest are not halflings.
See,
There
what I
you go.
always thought was interesting was
So isn't that fun?
doesn't
So
halflings
that's from A Dragon Walks Into a Bar. 300 plus one-liners, zingers, and jokes that will slay by Jeff Aldrich and John Taylor, an RPG.
Dragon
Walks the
walks
bar.
into a bar, isn't it? Battlenet walk.
So
but halflings
we like to start our
Don't-
RPG research.
don't
with random
halflings
selections?
don't halflings have a high they're able to throw rocks with increased
High
precision.
accuracy. Sure,
Yeah.
sure.
So
So
I wanted to just
because earlier this weekend we happened to flip to that. I saw the Tolkien minority and went, "Oh, I have to include that next society meeting." All right.
Okay, I have the question down on here. Art travels. We'll come back to that next.
Be interesting to see. Okay. We want to go into the news of late, or
Yes, let's do that. The next.
All right. Do
And
you
then-
have a particular order you want to go into?
Matter?
Okay,
Start with
so
the big
the One Ring role playing game was by Cubicle 7. They relinquished it. The license was picked up by Sophisticated Game, Swedish company. So it went from Italy and UK. They did a Kickstarter to fund the second edition One Ring role playing game. They wanted to raise, a few $1,000s, 100,000 SEK. It was funded in 4 minutes. Started. In the end, it raised over 20,000 US dollars.
Second highest, or did they break the record?
John would know more on that. I don't think. John, what was as far as record breaking?
They were second place to Freehold.
Okay.
Not Freehold, because that's who just got this. They were second place, though.
Okay.
They or third
Second
place
highest.
at worst.
Second highest
But I'm
ever
pretty
for
sure they're second place.
second highest ever for a role playing game.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So
Talk
talk about
Considering they did also miniatures, that is also very amazing.
Yeah. So, talk about what?
well, just carry on, but feel free to talk about why is this significant in general? Why is this good news for people role playing?
Well, otherwise, the Tolkien game is dead again for a while. And we run Tolkien games a variety. We still run MERP, we run Adventures of Middle Earth, we run others. Nobody has asked for years to run the Decipher one.
Things like this. 5-star. That's
Well,
positive, I think.
so role playing game community doesn't suffer from that as much as most role playing gaming. Not profitable. Mostly a labor of.
You have a lot of people besides, say, like publishers like Wizards of the Coast. You have lots of independent
There's a
people.
lot of especially because of both Kickstarter and Drive Through RPG.
Yeah.
You have thousands of different.
Right.
It's incredibly diverse, and even Wizards has had to be on their toes because they've been beaten at their own game.
Literally.
They did D&D 4th edition, and it was such a flop that Pathfinder that was based on D&D 3rd edition was the Paizo Publishing, a different company, outsold D&D.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, that was the first time D&D was actually by its own right. And that's why they were so against the open
Right.
game license. So they scrambled to get D&D out, and that helped them back to number one. But they constantly have, which is good.
So there's
a
a good-
vibrant market now.
It's a vibrant market. Okay.
In 2008, overall tabletop game industry was about not that big compared to video games being tens of billions, 17 billion. Then the crash happened. Video game sales went down a couple of billion, while tabletop games essentially. By 2016, 2018, tabletop games were over $1 billion industry. And as I haven't seen the numbers yet for 2020, but I think
Could only have
Or
gone up
maybe 2
since
billion.
last year.
yeah, I mean we the numbers haven't all finished coming, but I think it's pushing 1.8, maybe close to 2 billion.
And that's
for
without the
last year.
big cons last year.
Right. Yeah. Although
Yeah.
we saved a few
True.
without the physical.
But the physical
And
cons.
well, part of it is people needed more of that, but they're isolated anyway. So,
Okay.
of the role-playing game market, right? So you've heard that's all tabletop games, card games, board games. Role-playing games in 2008 were maybe $20 to $40 million. Right? It's now pushing. So it's still gone up at least double or price, but it's still a very small market, right? Compare 1.8, 20 million to 80 million. That's nothing to complain about, but it is a tiny, tiny, tiny fraction. But what's really notable is what happened with Hasbro. Is they announced that the Dungeons and Dragons IP sales, the board,
IP is intellectual
property, the board game sales, all these things, the board game sales for Hasbro, in role playing games and D&D IP, all that. John, you can correct me if I get the numbers off here, but basically, they have all their game sales, like toys and hobby, right? They have toys and then they got board games.
Right.
They outperformed toy department.
That's a first, right?
And the margin of profit on board games is much higher than in the game, than in the toy side of the side.
Wow.
So the profit margin was much higher. I think, what was it? They sold more toys, but the board games had a greater profit margin than the toy profit margin.
Right. Which means that they're going to say, oh, this is really good to invest in.
Right.
I
Which
love,
they've been increasingly doing.
I guess, just real briefly, my kind of thought on too why it's good news that this Kickstarter campaign was so phenomenally successful is because not only does it rescue a system instead of having to kind of like start over
another
from scratch,
one.
right?
Another one.
And another one.
It just builds upon the
There's
previous.
a community out there of tour players, and part of the reason why I was committed to be a game master for Lore Master is because I thought this is something worth serving. I'm really happy that that community.
You don't have to learn a whole new
obviously-
system.
Yeah, and they kind of carry it forward and all the good things we like about Tor.
Yeah.
And then also
With some enhancements.
it looks really great what they're developing, and they've got the money now to be quality.
Yep, that's the hope anyway. That's the
Yep.
hope. So
We hope
I
so.
today confirmed my orders, and I did 2 accounts. Ordered them under 2 accounts under. I did my personal account and I did my LLC
Right.
business account.
Right.
So the business account I actually did as a retailer
Okay.
and have bought 5 copies, 4 rules, and 5 copies of the starter set. I then have to turn around.
Right.
So I figure I'll have those for Tolkien Moot.
Yep.
For anybody who wasn't able to get it, if they weren't able to get it, want to get it then,
Right.
we'll have it if you like it.
They started a project manager just
I will
this week.
probably buy one.
Great.
Started their project manager for the Kickstarter campaign. So
Okay.
there are a number of add-ons that they
Yeah, and I got all the add-ons on my personal account.
really.
Yeah. So for the retail one, all I had was the core rule book and the starter set. That's all they gave me. Buy anything else.
Right.
But for my personal account, I bought everything.
Yeah.
And sometimes 2 or 3.
So they have a map of Eriador that looks
Yep.
nice.
And they've got the cloth maps.
Cloth map.
Yes.
Which is-
Yeah,
Because that's the problem with Tor. I have these paper
the
maps, and I'm
paper,
like,
yeah.
you've got to get them laminated, and some
Yep.
people won't do that because they're like, well,
Yeah, no, so that's very neat. We're looking forward. So I just confirmed my order today. So hopefully it'll be here. And our next,
well, a lot of
maybe,
that's
maybe not.
I
What did
doubt
they
it.
say the date
What
was?
they're saying is that they.
Well,
will-
I mean the PDFs.
Oh, yes,
I meant the PDFs
yeah, the
should be
PDF.
available. We can start
I'm
looking
hopeful.
at stuff.
Yeah, I'm hopeful that we could use those if possible for Tolkien movies.
That's what I'm hoping. I'm hoping it gets here in time for Tolkien Moot. I mean, at least we'll have the PDFs to do, very least. Yeah.
Anything else on that?
Francisco
that-
Donatello will be the lead designer for Tor and AIM.
Right. So Francesco, who created the original tour, is
Yeah.
continuing. That's
Yeah.
great because he's got good taste.
Exactly. And that's the thing that wasn't a wholesale kind of abandonment of anything. In some ways, it was more of
It's a transition.
and a preserving, because the other company, so Cubicle 7, which produced a lot of good material,
Did you ever hear
they
why?
moved to Ireland.
Yeah.
I think it was artistic differences.
Right. That's really no idea what.
Nope.
Yeah.
Nope. So,
It will also be set after The Lord of the Rings.
it was
believe. Or is it
between The
before-
Hobbit-
when Lord of the Rings starts?
No, it was always between. It was always between the end of The Hobbit and the beginning of Lord of the Rings. That's always when it's
That
set
was
back.
originally, but the next one is set further in the future.
oh, there is something to that, but I'm trying to remember what it is.
I think it's like 10 later or something.
Maybe.
Isn't it?
I don't know. So
Yeah.
if we
Anyway,
could,
we'll
if
worry
we
about
could
that later.
table that, and
Yep.
then just, is there anything else that we need to talk about in the society meeting without taking too much time on the gaming
Chris?
part? About news or
Well, sad news. ProjectNorthmore.org. We didn't succeed this time to buy Tolkien's old house, but we are continuing the vision by establishing the Oxford Center for Fantasy, dedicated to Oxford's most famous fantasy writer, j.r.r. Tolkien, and an alternative location in the city. The quest goes on, and we are really excited to share what we are doing.
anybody else have any news related, either update on Amazon series or maybe updates on the book?
Well, the series, I mean, I didn't see much, but they were talking about how New Zealand is really looking forward to possible tourists
Oh yeah.
because of this new series. They're talking. They're really talking it up, saying it's going to be huge for them in terms of. And well, whatever the point. Japanese learn that sometimes Americans being a lot of tourists can be kind of a pain in the neck sometimes. So on one hand, they're getting money, but on the other hand, they have to deal with the tourists. And I don't know. I don't. Yeah,
But
exactly.
it seems like in New Zealand, though, all in all, the balance of it would be that the revenue from tourism, they were pretty happy about that, right?
Yeah, that's what I was reading.
The
Yeah,
trade-off.
yeah.
It's probably the structure probably. I know my daughter actually. My oldest daughter was married last May, and her honeymoon was going to be in England, and they were going to, among other things, some of the sites like the Shire. They've got the little village, but
Right.
because of COVID, they weren't able to. So they're hoping to go back sometime. Else?
April 16th, Variety Magazine. The Amazon's upcoming Lord of the Rings TV series will cost approximately $465 million to produce the first season. Radio New Zealand reported that the series, which is currently filming in the country, will spend 650 million New Zealand dollars on season 1, which converts to 464.2 million US dollars. Sources confirmed that the hefty price tag is accurate, although it does not include startup costs for launching the series that will presumably be spread over multiple seasons.
Yes, and that was the cost of getting the rights to like billions. I thought rather insane.
Yeah, the number is just incredible. They were saying that even Game of Thrones didn't have that much money
It's
backing
the
them.
most expensive. Yet.
I remember when they made such a big deal about Battlestar Galactica dollars an episode, 1977. That was huge. It was ever. Only had the one season,
Right?
but it was $1 an episode.
They make back their money.
I have no idea. I didn't get another season.
Oh.
They got
Well, it did. It got Battlestar Galactica Earth, which was horrific. The budget
1980.
was slashed. Yeah, 1980.
Lauren,
It was
what was his
so
name?
bad.
Lauren, actor.
Lauren
Lauren
Green.
Green.
Oh, but yeah, the Earth one was so.
They're trying to ride on that
Oh.
wave of after Star Wars and
Yeah,
kind of,
they did. And the first season, you know, as campy as it,
I liked it.
Still decent. I watch it. It's as campy as it's still. And then they did the remake that was so dark. But what was in anyway? Total tangent. But
Yep.
But as far as expensive TV, yeah, that was $1 million an episode. 19.
The way Voyager, even though they're not related at all, the interest up again later of far away in space trying to make your way home back to Earth.
Well, Lost in Space.
Okay, well, I think that's probably it. I think got good things coming up, so we'll try to. Or did you want to briefly? I don't know if it's relevant or not.
They really liked our second webinar, and they asked for my invoice and wait for that, and we'll
Glad to hear that.
fingers crossed. But yeah, so we're packed on their programming, their line program,
John?
and how they do business.
John?
I'd like to mention something about Token Moot real fast and Tor/AIM. I've already talked to Francisco, and he says we can get it on the beta testing before it gets published. So if it timing lines up to the Token Moot, we should be able to do get some early access.
I think we should use that Sunday evening slot. Thanks.
Right. But hopefully we could also play test it at Token Moot.
Well, yeah, no, yeah, definitely. That's.
That'd be great.
I mean, I'm going to have the alpha. That's already in their plan. So.
That's for Tor, though. I don't think.
Oh,
AIM,
for AIM, yeah,
I
I
don't
don't
think
know on
AIM.
AIM.
I'm not sure if
Yeah,
they're
that's
remaking
okay.
that right now.
They are going to remake it, but they're going to wait a couple months to announce anything about it. They're
Yeah,
Oh,
and I'm not as excited about AIM.
Okay.
Or as the one.
All right. Well, maybe point unless there's something else, we can
That's
go
good.
on to the next letter.
Please.
I also would like to say that back in the day, we used to, at one time, read that we were learning Elvish vocabulary.
Yeah, we were
And-
doing that from the book.
In the future, at some point, that'd be fun to do. We
Okay.
don't need to do that again today, but I just that out there.
Or for Numenor, we should be.
Adonaic.
Yeah.
Good idea. Yeah.
The what is it? The Tongues of Arda website. I just love that website. The problem is, if you're gonna really learn Elvish, you really need to take the effort to kind of, because it's not easy. It's like
You
You
very.
gotta get the Babel, or no, what is it called? The Rosetta Stone
Yeah,
software for Elvish.
yeah, exactly.
Well, my problem is I can't.
It's kind of like Latin, yeah.
Okay.
All right. So you want to do letters next year?
Yep.
Was there any more news that you wanted to cover? John, did you have?
Shaking his head, no.
Okay. Have any more?
Well, Numenor. I know we're going to be doing Numenor again.
Yeah.
Published at 30.
I got a job.
Nobody.
Cool.
Yeah, he
I'm
actually
actually
got
working.
money out of the deal.
Okay.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
so, but
I'm
related
getting
to
off track.
Tolkien,
I know I'm getting off track. But yeah, Numenor. So what? I mean, you'd say the golden age in Numenor. So what exactly are you talking about? Is this before they? Before Sauron ends up
yeah,
corrupting them, and
it's a specific time period, and you're really talking about at the point. There's a critical point where their technology, their shipbuilding technology, and their exploration. Tar Eldarion, he is the first one to have them return to Middle Earth, and their ships. There's all kinds of different sorts of ships. They're at a point where they're able, as a seafaring society, you think about Japan, you think about Britain, all these island countries had amazing navies. Just that's what happened. And so I think logical construct. Tolkien wanted to explore. Well, they can't go west, so what would it look like? And so, really, from that point of Tar Eldarion, Second Age point where you get, uh, help me out, Ar-Pharazôn.
Well, yeah,
Or-
that's our Pharaoh's on
Well,
the end.
That's the end, and
Yeah,
there's a point where to that where they start saying why can't we go west, and there's content.
Right, they
So
start
that's
pushing-
kind of the bookends,
yeah.
because at that point it's the decline of Numenor.
yes.
We're trying to focus this
They-
time on
they-
the Golden Age.
Part of it is they start out with the Elendili, the lineage of Elendil. They have like a 400 or 500 year life,
Right.
which slowly gets shorter. And then all the other Numenorians have a 200 or 300, 400 year lifespan.
Right. Even
And they appreciated the gift of death and everything. And they were grateful for all of it, and not a problem. And so at first they just, explored the island and cultivated it and made it their own for a very long period before they started to explore the world, Earth. At some point, they noticed their lifespans were getting a little shorter and a little shorter, and they started to glorify death a little. Started to make originally the tomb very basic and simple. They started, to bury wealth with them. Ornate tomb. And their lifespans continue to get shorter and shorter, and their fear of death, rather than respect of it as a gift, kept increasing. And so as that happened, that fear of dying and needing to cling to the material world increased. They became more obsessed with materialism throughout the world and started, whereas before, when they first came to Middle Earth, they brought their technologies and they drove away the monsters of Sauron and the others and helped the primitive people there be free. Gift bringer, friendly and helpful. When they started to come back later, started to come and take, through trade and other things, but they started, stripping the little and bringing stuff back to building up their world. They're always going north, south, and east, or west because of the pen of the.
well, I thought, but
Of
when
Amon.
when does so at this moment, Amon is
Part of the
covered-
west, it's still part of the planet.
It's still part of the
but
planet.
it are mists and stuff like that to make it.
But
difficult.
But right, so they don't go that direction because they don't want to.
They don't go because
They're
Manwë
worried that
said
the-
you can go north, south, and east all you want.
Well, there's
just
this
don't go
idea that if
west.
they go west, they disappear off the map and nobody
No.
knows if they
No, no,
survive.
They
no,
know.
not
They
yet.
know where they'll go.
Yeah,
Well,
no, they know. They were told when they said, "Here's this island we raised up. That was raised up for you, as a gift." Wow, thank you, because they fought the battle against Morgoth, and so Valar wanted to show this appreciation to these tribes and such. So many other Manish races all fought on the side of Melkor. But he said, you can go north, you can go south, you can go east, explore all you want, just don't go west. That's verboten.
Right.
This is the land of the gods. Don't.
I'm
come to our
getting it
land.
confused with afterwards. After they,
That's
after
later.
they,
That's later.
because they did land on Amon, but then
That's later.
the earth opened up, and then the whole
that's the
earth,
fall of Numenor.
Right.
We will get to that in
yes.
another year.
Yeah,
or two.
because that actually happens at the
That's
same
what
time.
that was the first adventure I wrote for Tolkien Moon. Is the fall of Numenor.
right,
Right, but now we're going to do it in order.
kind of like Jurassic Park, trying to get off the island as fast as you can without dying.
That's exactly what it is. You got 10 days to get off the island before it goes down. That's exactly what
You
that
gotta watch out
adventure is. Yes. So, anyway, so this increasing fear of death and less appreciation of death as a gift or as a curse, and increasing clinging to life,
and memories.
right, and memories and materials and all. And so what happened was, originally when the kings would age, they would age gracefully, as put it. They would get to of a certain age and hand the scepter to the next person and go die gracefully. Their full sanity.
Sounds like
They
a Star Trek.
But as the years progressed, you started seeing more and more of the emperors and leaders clinging to their leadership and refusing to give up the throne till they were out, with senility and everything, and just died practically on the throne, using to, like, I think even there's in one description of having to pry the scepter.
Dark crystal with the emperor.
Yeah, exactly.
Trial by stone.
So they're just clinging to life, even though life had lost all value.
Yeah.
And so then the tombs became more and more ornate,
But that
and more
came.
and more wealth. And
Didn't
then
that
they
come
started
from
to,
the influence of Sauron?
Not
Because
yet.
didn't they capture him?
Actually, it's the other way around.
Yeah,
It's
no, that was all at the end.
It's that the
That's at the
condition
end.
of their culture allows them, when Sauron is captured.
That's how he's able to.
Oh, so they're
play
vulnerable
them.
to him
Yes.
because
They're
they're
already
already having problems.
Exactly.
Yes.
And then it just gets worse.
Yes.
It's
he
like
then,
from
he
the
then plays
frying
on
pan
that.
into the
Right.
fire.
So they're doing this, and people of Elendil and such are disturbed by what they're seeing. And there's been some lineage issues, and things are happening there. And meanwhile, increasingly now they're coming to Middle Earth and the other lands and plundering. They are taking. They are stripping the. They are strip mining. They are just taking what they want and hauling it all back to the island.
The
with
dwarves did.
John's cat.
He's using it as a.
So
toy,
the dwarves weren't a little bit angry about them running around taking all their gold and
There was
Well,
a
they were
lot of
plundering
tension
it.
building. They weren't
They were
plundering,
plundering
the
the
dwarven
wood
area.
because
Well, the ships, but no, they were plundering all resources, and still they did trade. They didn't like go to war with the dwarves or anything.
they went from like kind of a French trapping. Hey, let's
Yeah.
trade to a conquistadores
Yes,
kind of
yes,
style.
yes. And so, for example, Greenwood the Great, which is Mirkwood, that whole area of
Vani
river,
and Anduin.
the whole Anduin plain there, that used to be all Greenwood the Great. So from Mirkwood all the way to Fangorn to the Misty Mountains, all of that was solid tree, no gap, all forest. And the Númenóreans ripped most of those trees out of there, out of what became their Caledon and all of that, were the Riders of Rohan, etc.
Yes, that's true. Where they were, but I thought it was also further west in Minhiath.
Any river that they could go up.
Yeah, because the
They would
Gwathlo, right, with
Yep.
the Grey Flood, all of that up to Tharbad.
Yep.
Used to be wooded. In fact, I think
Stripped it all.
the Gwathlo, I think in Elvish means something like tree tunnel, and there's so I
Yeah,
could I just
so that's how they
mention-
transitioned.
Sure.
Yeah, but
No, I mean that's good. Though.
Please.
Does that help for kind of a
Yeah,
and then
it's just-
finally we get to
it's
our
just the
Pharaoh's
funny
own.
thing is I've read the Silmarillion and I've read the Lord of the Rings,
Right.
but that little section I've always had a really tough time trying to remember the stuff
Most
about
people
Numenor.
only remember the last few pages of the Holabeth, the Fall of Numenor,
Right.
which is the part where they are the mightiest armada and military force that ever has been. And they show up at Sauron's place, and he goes, "I give." He doesn't even fight; he just surrenders. He's like, "Okay, you got me," and the rest of his forces go disperse and such, just completely overwhelmed. And so he's prisoner. But then he gets to talk poison. He waits and bides his time as our Pharaoh's Own starts to age. Our Pharaoh's Own the Golden was very young when he first dominated. What didn't have the fear, but he bided his time. As he started to fear death, that's when he started talking. He's like, "Well, there's a why they don't let you go west, because they don't want you to be elves."
This sounds like a vampire movie. He outlives them. That's the only reason why he's able to talk
Well, but
them into
but he has a
into-
huge consequence. He can never be in a fair form after Numenor
or Anatar?
ever again. He can only be the foul form.
Can't do the 1980 hair.
Oh man, that's a huge.
Yeah, which we get into that in another year or two on
Oh,
that
hair.
when our Pharaoh's Own period. That's
Well,
the
yeah,
final
because
part of the chapter.
It's overrated.
isn't the thing about
And then we do a year after.
isn't the same thing about Melkor is that slowly he put so much energy into the earth that he became kind of
There's Morgoth.
attached
There's
to it.
Morgoth nature.
yeah.
Yeah. And again, it's that focus on material
Yep.
or the having and
Yep.
So,
Well, I didn't mean to drive it too
No,
far
No,
that direction, but I wanted
totally
to know.
appropriate. That's
I think that's
what we're
totally
here to talk about.
totally relevant, and
Yeah.
I think that that's why it's important that we do take the three because,
Or more.
like Hawk said, it's very easy to focus on, and it's see why. I mean, I have had so many past when I was teaching science, whether it be with X or with spiders, the immediate what they think of is your factor about the negative possibilities, getting stung or whatever. And that's good, but I always try to start them off with, well, what do we see about this that's good? And in the same way with civilizations, is to look back the Romans. I mean, it's really interesting that whole idea. What he's exploring, I think, is to have a society that is technologically most advanced at its highest point comes to power and its weakest point morally.
Yeah, which happens a lot. That happens a lot throughout China. You see that with Rome, Greeks, that in Israel, America, recurring theme across all cultures.
That's why it has very like it just works connect with the backgrounds. I should mention that actually we do have a little bit more news quick before we read the letter. So we are a smile of the Tolkien Society, as mentioned before. And on their website, they do have some news that's worthwhile looking up. We'll put these notes, but the winners of Tolkien Society Awards in 2021 have been announced. And there's a really wonderful new painting by Ted Nasmith. Ever seen any of the Tolkien calendars?
Or Other Minds magazine, John Howe.
Yes.
j.r.r.
And this is where as he beheld a vision of Gondolin amid the snow. So I believe that's Tuor. And his comes to Gondolin not by eagle, but the second time by land. So it's a really nice. Lots more in there to see. So that's something to keep about. And then also they have new that have their AGM, but they still have their annual guest speaker, which is Verlin Flieger, and I've just heard so many good things about Verlin as Tolkien scholar, really great, real, and that was spoke on the topic of for Earendel. Cool. And that should be on YouTube.
Well, I've been lazy in terms of reading books lately. I really need to get back to good Tolkien literature, because you have a copy of the romance. I need to borrow that from you one of these times.
The one that was republished with Christopher.
I'm not sure that they have pickup lines.
That's actually a great idea. 10 pickup lines from Baron and
Luthien.
Yes, I would gladly rest a
Do
jewel.
you come to this Vale often?
or
do you dance?
How about, shall I wrest a jewel from the crown of an evil lord for your father? or how it should have ended, maybe.
You know that necklace?
Yeah.
Really flip.
Okay.
That's good. I like
Yes.
it.
Yes. Okay. So. All right. So we need letter 182.
You want to take a short break?
Yes. Let's do that.
Pretty short.
5 minutes.
What's that music they play during intermission?
Kenny G.
Share this on here.
Yeah. After. We'll be back after these messages.
All the llama credits.
After these is.
Welcome back to the Tolkien Society, our April 17th, 2021 monthly meeting. TolkienScholars.org, youtube.com/Tolkien Scholars, at Tolkien Scholars. Alrighty then. You have a little something you wanted to cover?
Yeah, just briefly before we start talking about Tolkien letters, I have here a book, I guess, called Collier's Photographic History of the European War. Before it was before the United States joined it. And so this antique book my aunt and uncle gave to me, it's kind of falling apart, but it has a lot of great photographs. It includes the Somme. I'll see if I can find the Somme. This is related to Tolkien because he fought in the Battle of the Somme in 1916, I believe. And
how do you spell that?
SOMME.
Oh, Psalm. Oh, okay. Now I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I can never figure out where Eep is.
Yeah, Eep. I'm not finding it right now, but there's just a number of really powerful,
Pressure burn.
incredible pictures, of course, because of photography was also advancing. Okay, here we go.
I actually have a bunch of VHS footage from when I was converting 16 millimeter footage. It was a veteran who was there. He was on the film crew.
Yeah.
And he had a bunch of never before published 16 millimeter footage in the 90s. And so I helped do the that's for him. Then later showed up on people.
Oh wow.
And I still have a lot of those, like my master copies of those. And it's like German soldiers being marched out and smacked around restrooms and stuff. It's a lot of footage you don't normally, weren't really PC for the message of behavior.
Exactly. Well, I'm gonna have to rebind this book, but one on the left side. This is just one picture from the Somme, but they didn't have lots of photographs of the actual fighting because, they had thousands of soldiers died in a single day, and so the carnage of the Somme. There's pictures that you go to, whatnot, but there was so much going on. But this is from that time period. I believe Tolkien was in the Lancashire Fusiliers.
Yep, that's not.
And he survived, but several of his friends did not.
Right.
The United States joined the next year. My great uncle Teddy was shipped out from the U.S. To France, and he only participated in a few months, but he wounded by friendly fire, a shrapnel that was shot that didn't go far enough, and it came down by the trench. So he was wounded. But anyway, I wanted to mention that yesterday on April 16, National World War I Memorial was dedicated in Washington, D.C. And a lot of people are surprised that we've never had one. They didn't have one in D.C. like there were for the wars. But it was planned for the centennial, but 2 years ago they weren't able to put it all together. So that's pretty special, and it's worthwhile going on to there's a website for the World War I centennial that I recommend to everybody.
What exactly? Okay, I know why we went. Second World War, we tried to be hands off until the Japanese
bombed Pearl
Harbor. What ended up making the Americans get involved in the European war during the first?
Yeah, we were already involved with providing supplies constantly to keep Britain alive. But then when they started to turn on our ships,
okay,
that became
they were blamed for sinking.
Oh, that's right.
Yep.
Now I've forgotten, but right. But how long was the war?
It was
1914 to 18.
4 years in total. Americans joined kind of late in the game, but we were able to bring enough help that for the decisive victory. So yeah, only about I believe about a year and a half for 4 years in total.
Tolkien being such a gentle soul, that had to be hard.
Oh yeah.
Tolkien as the way
Was
he
that-
was.
That was a defining moment for that
Yeah.
generation.
Well,
So let's go ahead and move to letter 182 of Tolkien Society. When everybody you have a copy of the letters of J.r.r. Tolkien.
I need to get a copy. I don't know where to get one, but
Bookstore.
well, yeah, bookstore.
Amazon.
how dare you bring up
I don't want to support
Profit.
Amazon.
a place that failed?
There are lots of other bookstores out there.
Oh,
I'm just
okay.
saying, in addition to bookstores,
We should probably buy. I'll try to see if I can buy get maybe copies or something. Just have them on
Capital
hand.
Society, yeah,
You know, I
that'd
mean,
be
because if
great.
you can't get the kinds that are marked up, they're pretty.
Yeah.
So that'd be nice
I'm-
for.
I'm personal friends with the book, one of the original book distributor networks, Alibris.com.
Nice.
Do you want me to start? Letter 182. A letter to Anne Barrett, Houghton Mifflin, not dated. I shall certainly now, if I am allowed, publish parts of the written first and rejected. But the surprising success of The Lord of the Rings probably caused that rejection. Though I do not think you have the appeal of the j.r.r., no hobbits, full of mythology and elvishness, all that high style, H-I-G-A style?
I think that's
Chaucer
high.
might say. High style, as Chaucer might say,
Oh, okay.
which has been so little to the taste of many, stands secretary, under business of the j.r.r. But also,
I
I
think
just
you
jumped.
missed
Sorry,
this,
it's many reviewers. But I am not allowed to get at it. I am only submerged and secretary of the j.r.r., but also under professional business. One of the ways of making it quietly, with practically no, make our last 2 or 3 office intolerably laborious. While the appearance of the j.r.r. has landed me in most of my philological colleagues, professor of Anglo-Saxon, coming to the U.S. Most of my philological colleagues are shocked behind my back and some at the fall of a philological. And anyway, the cry is, now we know you have been wasting your time for. How you have been wasting your time for 20.
Ouch.
That's harsh.
Well, he's always so embarrassed because
Yeah.
I've been wasting it fiddling.
Don't you wish the critics
They're
saw how
eating
much
their
money
hats
he
now.
made?
Oh yeah.
So the screw is on for many things, a more professional kind, long overdue. Alas, I like them both, but have only one man's time. Also, I am getting rather ripe, if not actually decrepit. I like that. With the retirement this summer of Sir John Bees, Lord Sherwell,
Sure. Well,
I am left this, having sat in a chair here since 1995, or no one seems to act, except for 1 or 2 who cry, "How long, O Lord, how long?" yearning for the padded seat, actually stuffed with thistle as one. That was a great insight into the Oxford politics.
hey,
Big
and look what
time.
I'm wearing.
Yes.
Oxford T-shirt. There we go. And so
An academia.
now Lewis,
Nonsense.
help me out, Chris Cooperstein. But Lewis was at Magdalen College. But where
Yes.
was Tolkien? They're all colleges of Oxford. The question is which one he was at. He wasn't at Magdalen. He was Magdalen. Looks like Magdalen. They put Magdalen College. Tolkien, I think, was at a different
very
one.
grim.
Better?
Is
What?
that the Slytherin?
That's
Is
where
it
he
grim?
went to when he thought he attended there.
I was
Did
like,
he also
Harry
go
Potter
there?
reference?
I don't remember. I'm sorry. Xavier's the only one on your shirt that I remember.
Exeter is the one that he. Maybe he also went there, or actually was a professor as well.
I don't remember about C.S. Lewis. That's one thing I couldn't remember is he I know he was the chair of, what was it?
Medieval literature.
Medieval literature, but I don't remember.
Chris, anything?
Exeter shows up. Pembroke shows up. I'm trying to remember. I think he ended at Merton, if
At what?
I recall.
At what?
Or maybe I'm mixing my people up, but I thought Merton was where he ended up.
Merton.
Right there.
Let me see here. Pembroke College for 20 years from 1925. So 1945, he was at Pembroke in North Oxford. And then in 1945, he moved to Merton College, yes, as professor of English language and literature. It was from this college that he retired in 1959, and he and Edith moved to Poole, Dorset in 1968. So he stuck around college for 10 years after he retired, or 9 years after he retired.
Did you say he started at Pembroke, or was there one before that I didn't hear?
Pembroke. Oh, no, you're right. 1911, student at Exeter.
Didn't know. I didn't get it right. That's amazing. I was just taking a stab in the dark.
It's your one. It's your one bit of glory, Corey. You'll never get.
I rolled it. I rolled a 20.
And then OED work. And then his career began at Leeds as reader in English language.
Right.
Before he got on with at Oxford. So Leeds must have not been so kind to him, I suppose. Or he missed his friends for a 5-year hiatus.
I'm not sure. Anybody else have any other discussion on that letter?
Well, which colleagues were shocked to his face?
Like Hawk said, what that show is about.
Very political references, constant politics,
I like the
A
bit about
lot.
the chair being stuck
and
with,
definitely bitter.
I like the chair being stuck with.
Yes,
wool.
yes.
Ow.
Padded seat stuffed with. And I love his phrase that I'm getting a
Like a
little
Game
ripe,
of Thrones thing.
a little ripe, if not downright decrepit.
Yes, and that was an.
Katie and I can relate to that. It's undated, but they guesstimate.
And that would put him about 60. Born in what, 1890?
They say that people usually who become famous usually become famous after they passed away. They're never their generation never seems to see the.
Well, Jesus said, a prophet is not honored in his own hometown.
Yeah, exactly.
So he retired in 59, and this letter is 56. So there's kind of this, what I observe, at least in government, is this revolving door.
This is academia, and that's a little different than government.
Yes, but the point is the same. There is a revolving door between
Filling the
the
roles.
people who are senior and
Those who want your throne.
you tend to, as a younger person, not want that senior person to be around for too many years because his policies and or politics are not what you prefer, because you're the next generation down.
Before we read the next letter, I just want to mention briefly that for role playing, one of the neat things about role playing that it allows people to do is that if there's a disability, still enjoy it. So tell us what you have here.
Oh, as far as this is for so this looks a lot like a visual representation of Minecraft. right?
Kind of, yeah.
It's kind of like Minecraft.
So what is it?
It's terrain to use for miniatures and such. So you can use them for wargaming. We have it for role playing games. And what's really great is we've been trying to find good terrain for our blind players, blind and visually. What's remarkable about the tile has a different texture for the different type. Sand feels kind of gritty like sand. The wood stone's got the water has a nice ripple. Some lava's got it. The grass. Each one has a distinct touch to it. And with your eyes closed, feel what the terrain. And it's sturdy so that you can move your hands around without it falling apart. I've been looking for use custom terrain. I've used Legos in the past for terrain for blind players, but they don't have the texture.
Yeah.
This is like oversized. This is to scale for the miniatures, right? It's the 1-inch squares. So it's what you would like. We have the battle mat here, but it's 3-dimensional. And it lets you, and it's sturdy, so you can pre-assemble it and have your dungeons and ready to go. But most importantly, it allows blind and visually players to be able to feel it.
Right.
And for the video camera, the squares are actually really helpful to track from a distance how far you are, like, your miniatures are from each other, because you can squares, right? And that helps you know distance. And these are reasonably priced. A set of about 120 pieces, about 50. They're called Adventure Terrain by Monster. Scary good.
Yep. Affordability is always such an issue.
Yeah,
So that's
and then
nice.
we got treat. So yeah, but really, really great for we're trying to get a grant, $20,000 grant to get our warehouse, and then grant would be to run a blind table or multiple tables and every week. Get 25 grand, we can afford the rent warehouse, all this out to the valley. My house is just so it would give us
So to make it
along a bus route and everything.
so that you can make it even, so that you both get to play the game. You put a cloth over the top and try and feel underneath the cloth, or
For a sighted person.
No, there's no need. There's no need.
I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
I'm saying, like,
It-
the blind person has to feel it out.
Just really, that turning sympathetically. I have a deaf friend, watches
And we
movies,
run deaf games too. So,
yeah, without the sound on, and I thought, how would that be for me if I'm watching this and trying to make out?
without subtitles.
Thankfully, we have subtitles. Well, let's read 183, and Chris, like to read? Would you like to start us off? Otherwise,
This is a long one.
yep,
That's
I
a
can
long
read some
one.
too.
The one about the Silmarillion.
No, it's a review of the Return of the King.
I think he was briefly referring to the in the last letter, saying, and
Yeah.
can I just say how cute that is that he gets Lord of the Rings LR? Like, nobody does that, right? Like, now it's LOTR,
right?
but back then,
It was
nobody-
PH and LR.
yeah, he's like
Yeah,
of and the. And not
but he did do TH when he was about the Hobbit. The Hobbit. It's not
The
a
only
Hobbit.
one.
It's the Hobbit. You will be. I will spread you over too much toast.
So you can't
Stop it!
use,
You're trying to butter me up.
Who's a musician who has half the staff?
Oh.
So moving along.
Okay,
Please
183 notes
rescue us.
on W.H. Auden's review of Return of the King. A comment apparently written for Tolkien's own satisfaction and not sent or shown to anyone else on At the End of the Quest, Victory. A review of The Return of the King by W.H. Auden in the New York
Oh,
Times
yeah,
Book
yeah.
Review,
Auden, yeah.
22nd January 1956. The text given here is a rewriting at some later date of an earlier version now lost, which is in all probability written in 1956. In the review, Auden wrote, "Life, as I experience it in my own person, is primarily a continuous succession of choices between alternatives. For objectifying this experience, the natural image is that of a journey with a purpose beset by dangerous hazards and obstacles. But when I observe my fellow man, such as an image seems false. I can see, for example, that only the rich and those on vacations can take journeys. Most men, most of the time, must work in one place. I cannot observe them making choices, only the actions they take, and if I know someone well, I can usually predict how he will act in a given situation if then I try to describe what I see as if I were an impersonal camera, I shall produce not a quest, but a naturalistic document. Both extremes, of course, falsify life. There are medieval quests which justify the criticism made by Eric Auerbach in his book Mimesis. Someone go pick that one up and review it. The word of nightly proving is a world of adventures. The night's exploits are feats accomplished at random, which do not fit into any politically purposive pattern. Mr. Tolkien has succeeded more completely than any previous writer in this genre in using the traditional properties of the quest.
That's just the preface to the letter.
Oh man.
I mean, and that was to explain it. Thank you, Chris. Go ahead.
I am very grateful for this review. Most encouraging, as coming from a man who is both a poet and a critic of distinction. Yet, I think, one who has much practiced the telling of tales. In any case, I am a little surprised by it, for in spite of its praise, it seems to me a critic's way of thinking rather than an author's. It is not, to my feeling, the right way of considering either quests in general or my story in particular. I believe that it is precisely because I did not try and have never thought of trying to objectify my personal experience of life that the account of the Quest of the Ring is successful in giving pleasure to Auden and others. Probably it is also the reason in many cases why it has failed to please some readers and critics. The story is not about j.r.r. at all, and is at no point an attempt to allegorize his experience of life, for that is what the objectifying of the subject of an experience in a tale must mean, if anything. I am historically minded. Middle Earth is not an imaginary world. The name is the modern form, appearing in the 13th century as still use of Middle-Earth, and an ancient name for the oikumene, the abiding place of men. The objectively real world in use, specifically opposed to imaginary worlds as fairyland or unseen worlds as heaven and hell. The theater of my tale is that this earth, the one in which we now live, but the historical period is imaginary. The essentials of that abiding place are all there, at any rate for the inhabitants of Northwest Europe. So naturally it feels familiar, even if a little glorified by the enchantment of distance in time.
Men do go and have in history gone on journeys and quests without any intention of acting out allegories of life. It is not true of the past or the present to say that only the rich or those on vacation can. Most men make some journey, whether long or short, with an errand, or simply to go there and back again, is not of primary importance. As I tried to express it in Bilbo's walking song, even an afternoon walk may have important effects. When Sam when Sam had got no further than the woody end, he had already had an eye-opener. For if there is anything in a journey of any length, for me it is this, a deliverance from the plant-like state of helpless passive sufferer. An exercise, however small, of will and mobility, and of curiosity, without which a rational mind becomes stultified. Though, of course, all this is an afterthought, and this is the major point. A storyteller, a journey is a marvelous device, provides a strong thread on which a multitude of things that he has in mind may be strung, make a new thing, various, unpredictable, and yet coherent. My chief reason for using this form was simply technical.
You got to think about the hobbits. They're living in a well, no, not backwater, but it's kind of like they've explored they quit exploring. They don't go to Bree very often. You know what I'm saying?
After their long journeys from there.
Right, but what it does is
They
the more they know,
Yeah.
the bigger the area that they know, the more humble they are, because the simple fact is that they're looking and realizing the world is much larger than your house, but Chesterton would say something about the journey that can be had in the familiar, during in a journey of sorts that anyways, I would think Tolkien would be agreeing with
Oh, I think
this
so.
idea that he left and got onto a train and went to New Hoboken. I don't know what, that's probably not even in Britain, but he went to France. He made a huge deal about the fact that he went to France for maybe like 2 or 3 days and then came back to England, and he very rarely left.
I think crossing the English Channel, though it's only 2 miles, it's a huge psychological barrier for people. Like, I mean, they gladly do it,
Especially now with the channel.
yeah.
I was
But
gonna say,
it
unless
is
they take
it is like going away, other. It's Brendan's voyage across the ocean. I mean, it's just a sense of being cut off by the world in like comfortable Shire,
Right.
and they're
I would identify that with that, having grown up in Kitsap County, the peninsula, and having the big city be an hour ferry ride away, and you travel to the city, but I never, until dropping our older brother off at college, saw much of Eastern Washington, because it was so comfortable and there was so much good things to do right there in Kitsap County.
I think it's in the U.S. and it may have changed. Thousands. He was the average person. Usually did not move 50 miles, and in Europe it was even. Then you throw in the DDR. But for those without the DDR4 gene,
what's a DDR4
it's
gene?
one of the key ADHD,
Okay.
and it's kind of wanderer over the next. Also attention, traction, all. It's one theory. It's a theory that they're wondering why there's such a high concentration. And basically, the more immigrant culture prevalence seems.
Or
There's
the
a lot
people
of
that
theories
become.
about that.
Yeah, it's the people.
And well, because they're people who want to see, they're impulsive, don't want to stick with the. They need because they need the dopamine hit.
And they're
They need new stimulus.
and they're the innovators. Well,
Can be. But
Okay.
the key thing is they need to get that dopamine hit of excitement and stuff. Much more likely to keep traveling, whereas everybody else wants calm and settled. So you end up
even the Westward Pioneers is
Yep.
people who pick up stakes and move.
Yep, exactly.
Yes, Tolkien definitely did not have that gene
No,
in
he did
him.
not. He was a fellow
Although he
hobbit.
wrote fantasy about it.
Yeah, so I guess the Tooks might be the very, hobbits.
Well, that's the interesting question. Is
Because there was something a little Tookish.
is there yeah, I mean, what would that look like? Fantasy that is based on that more. This explains why most of the that I have are people who have lived elsewhere.
I have an interesting quote that I want to read,
Yes, go ahead.
but it's going to take me just a minute to find it. I think I'm pretty
We
close
haven't
to
actually
it.
finished.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we're still
I
in the
know.
middle of it.
Well, yeah, but this specific.
It's okay. We're
So
we're
while
having
you're looking, we
tangents on
could
topic.
read on the.
Go ahead,
Well, that would
read.
work.
I'll
Okay.
look.
We're going to continue. It's
In any case, I look on those of my fellow men that they described, old enough, served some long enough to have what one would call their basic or in comparison with the vitality and heredity, capacity to grow and develop, great pain, unfolding holdings of the patterns hidden through. So these are of course relations geomatic, which it is grown and may be damaged by terrestrial sense. But this comparison leaves out inevitably important point. Not only is developing a pattern well or man is both a seed and in some degree also a gardener for good will. I am impressed by the degree of development of character products of the will to modify in their direction. In some cases, the change can be made great and I have known one or two men could be self-made in this respect. Partial truth applied. Those who have flown largely by their own will efforts for no help from wealth or so. Kind of a variation.
I think I did. If you guys will put up with me for half a second,
I don't know.
feel like
You're acting like Tolkien.
I am probably too long-winded. It's a Newkirk trait.
let us not be hate.
We were talking about him leaving the Shire. Chesterton would reply, "The moment we are rooted in a place, the place vanishes. We live like a tree with the strength of the whole universe. The globetrotter lives in a smaller world than the peasant. He is always breathing an air of locality. London is a place to be compared to Chicago. Chicago is a place to be compared to Timbuktu. But Timbuktu is not a place, since there at least live men who regard it as the universe and breathe not an air of locality, but the winds of the world. The man in the saloon steamer has seen all the races of men, and he's thinking of the things that divide men: diet, dress, decorum, rings in the nose as in Africa, or in the ears as in Europe, blue paint among the ancients, or red paint among the modern Britons. The man in the cabbage field has seen nothing at all, but he is thinking of things that unite men: hunger and babies and the beauty of women and the promise or menace of the sky. Kipling, with all his merits, is the globetrotter. He has not the patience to become part of anything." So it's an insult on the globetrotting nature of Kipling. But the point is that Chesterton,
Another point of view.
that Chesterton has always kind of said that people that are just globetrotters don't really understand how to devote themselves to a single piece of what it becomes. And
The other put it is
I feel torn because I feel like there's both because I'm very grateful that sounds odd, but I'm very grateful that I did not live, grow up, and stay in the place where I was born. Because I feel like it is for other people to get to know them, not as in a book, but in real life.
Yeah.
And to experience even just the fact that our country is staggeringly stretches across thousands of miles. And so I love the journey. At the same time, I really, with the, like, I care about place. I do. And
Or
if
multiple here.
because if all there is just oh, I've been everywhere. I've got the T-shirt. It's literally.
Yeah, that's very.
Well, when
surface.
you're not willing to put any roots down anywhere, that's just as bad. I think is what Chesterton trying to say is that Kipling wasn't good because he was always globetrotting everywhere, and he was not willing to put any sort of loyalty to England as the place of his birth. You know what I'm saying? So
He did, but again, that was elsewhere, right? And so it's interesting how you have. I think that's almost a British, also kind of, but because I feel like Britain has much more of the sense of us and the land, and I'm trying to, but I feel like the British Empire was so far flung. The sun, yes,
Britishness.
and
They,
the sun
Grand
never
Tour.
set on the British Empire, and yet Britishness is very.
First Top Gear Grand the car show.
Yeah.
So they got in trouble last time with BBC. They're older guys now. I love their show. And they were explaining to the competitions between, and they were talking about the difference between English and British, or being of the UK versus. And what they would say is, so for example, if they were Scotsmen who
Yes.
won the race
Yes.
in a British car or something like that, they were British.
Yes.
If they were Scotsmen who won it in like a Scottish car or an American car or something, Scottish or
Right.
they're not British. They're an Englishman who did something that benefited the look of being Britishness. They're British. They did something that maybe besmirched that, then they were an Englishman. Things like that. And then they talked about the difference between a bonnet and a hood,
Yeah.
all those things. But it was very interesting. And they were making fun of that, right?
Right.
And so throughout the series, you have like, oh, he's a British. He's British.
Yes.
well, I just think
But there's that belonging no matter where you were.
well, I
Right.
think he's talking about a devotion to something
Right.
like a solid, not constantly switching, kind of like those people in college that can't ever decide on what they're gonna do. Yeah, I mean
Sure.
a little bit of
You
that
flighty.
is expected, but if you do it too much,
Mm-hmm.
then you're really
Never
never gonna finish anything,
Right.
right?
Or you
Speaking of never finishing, we better
Yes.
continue on because
Yep.
this is a long letter.
It is.
I'm
indeed.
sorry, I didn't
No,
want to
no,
get us
this
off
is-
task.
This
blame
was
sorry.
appropriate conversation. Totally on time.
Okay, so if you want to read,
No, I can
Well,
read it.
has John had a chance? John, did you
John, would you like to read? You're on Ace.
you have a copy of Tolkien's letters?
I think you said
You're on
no.
mute, John.
No, I do not have a copy of Tolkien's letters.
Okay, it's the letters of J.r.r. Tolkien.
Where are we at here?
Might want to get at
Some
some
persons?
point.
Right.
Yep, I will put that on my to buy list
Okay.
because the audio version probably is quite boring.
Yeah.
I can do this in action. Yeah. Some persons are, or seem to be, more calculable than others. But that is due rather to their fortune than to their nature as individuals. Calculable people reside in relatively fixed circumstances and it is difficult to catch and observe them in situations that are to them strange. Yeah, strange. That is another reason for sending hobbits, a vision of simple and calculable people in dangers. Sorry, I did that wrong. I read that wrong. A vision of simple and calculable people in simple and long settled circumstances on a journey far from settled home into strange lands and dangers, especially if they are provided with some strong motive for endurance and adaptation. Though without any high motive, people do change, or rather reveal the latent. On journeys, that is a fact of ordinary observation without any need of symbolic explanation. On a journey of a length sufficient to provide the untoward in any degree from discomfort to fear, the change in companions well known in the ordinary life and in oneself is obviously starting. I was just trying to say that earlier. I was thinking that the Hobbiton, or the even Bree seems a beautiful thing at the end of the compared
to what they
I mean they went through on this journey, but there's no way they would ever want to go back to Mordor, for example.
Right. Doesn't have a very high tourist.
Yeah. Okay. I dislike the use of political in such a context. It's me false. It seems clear to me that Frodo's duty was humane, not political. He naturally thought first of the Shire, since his roots were there. But the quest had as its object not the preserving of this or that polity, such as half republic, half aristocracy of the Shire, but the liberation from an evil tyranny of all humane, including such as the Easterlings and the Howardom,
and all of nature.
that were still servants of the tyranny. Denethor was tainted with mere politics, hence his failure and his mistrust of Faramir. It had become for him a prime motive to preserve the polity of Gondor, as it was against another potentate who had made himself stronger and was to be feared and opposed for the reason rather than because he was ruthless and wicked. Denethor despised lesser men, and one may be sure. Denethor despised lesser men, and one may be sure did then because he was ruthless. I think I. I'm reading it
Denethor
wrong.
despised lesser men, and one may be sure did not. He's kind of missing a comma.
You're right.
And one may be sure did not distinguish orcs and
Oh, and the allies of Mordor.
The difference between British English and American.
If he had survived as victor, even without use of the ring, he would have taken a long strides towards becoming himself a tyrant, and the terms and conditions he accorded to the deluded people of East and South would have been cruel and vengeful. He had become a political leader. Example, Gondor against the world, against the rest, essentially. But that was not the policy or the duty set out by the Council of Elrond. Only after hearing the debate and realizing the nature of the quest did Frodo accept the burden of the mission. Indeed, the elves destroyed their own polity in pursuit of a humane duty. This did not happen merely as... Sorry, something... I don't know why.
It's hard on
the
screen.
No, it's not the screen. Somebody sent me a text message and it blocked it out.
Yeah, that'll mess with you.
It's
Anyway,
important.
where is it?
Quality. Not fortunate.
It is known by them to be an inevitable result of victory, which could in no way be advantageous to elves. Elrond cannot be said to have a political duty or purpose. Auerbach's use of political may at first sight seem more justified, but it is not. I think really admissible, not even if we acknowledge the weariness to which mere errantry was reduced as the pastime reading of a class chiefly interested in feats of arm and love. About as amusing to us, or to me, as stories about cricket or yarns about touring teams. Those like me find cricket, as it is now, a ridiculous bore. But the feats of arms in, say, Arthurian romance or romances attached to the great center of imagination do not need to fit into a politically purposeful pattern. Well, if you need to move on to the next page, or if we did finish
Pattern.
it.
Oh,
Did
we have
finish?
more.
Oh, okay.
Or no.
Yeah.
When he says humane, this being a fairy story includes, of course, elves and indeed all speaking. Oh, that's pretty. So it was in the earlier Arthurian tradition, or at least this primitive but powerful imagination was an important element in them, as also in Beowulf. Auerbach,
He always comes back to Beowulf.
that's right.
Got to tie that into everything.
Auerbach should approve of Beowulf, for in it, an author tried to fit a deed of errantry into a complex political field. The English traditions of the international relations of Denmark, Gotland, and Sweden in ancient days. That is not the strength of the story, rather its weakness. Beowulf's personal objects in his journey Denmark are precisely those of a later knight, his own renown, and above that the glory of his lord and king. All the time, glimpse something deeper. Grendel is an enemy who has attacked center of the realm and brought into the royal hall the outer darkness, so that only in daylight on the throne. This is something quite different and more horrible than a political invasion of equals, men of another similar realm, such as Ingeld's later assault upon Heorot. Want to turn again, Chris? Overthrow of Grendel? Or Hawk?
Sure. The overthrow of Grendel makes a good wonder tale because he is too strong and dangerous for any ordinary man to defeat. But it is a victory, and in which all men can rejoice because he was a monster, hostile to all men and to all humane fellowship and joy. Compared with him, even the long politically hostile Danes and Gears with friends on the same side. It is the monstrosity and fairy tale quality of Grendel that really makes the tale important. Surviving still, where the politics have become dim, and the healing of Danish Geatish relations in an entente cordiale between two ruling houses, a minor matter of obscure history. In that political world, Grendel looks silly, though he certainly is not silly, however naif may the poet's imagination and description of him. It is 2:57. Shall I read on?
Yes.
That there's evil beyond political evil. Is that what essentially what he's saying?
Yes. Of course, like there's real evil, not just political evil. Yes. Of course, in real life, causes are not clear cut. It is, if only because human tyrants are seldom utterly corrupted into pure manifestations of evil will.
Chris?
Yep.
Just to point out that up above, N-A-I-F, I think that's naive, but it's an older spelling of naive.
Sure.
Making that. Sorry. Pure manifestations of evil will.
Pure manifestations of evil will. As far as I can judge, some seem to have been so corrupt, but even they may rule subjects only part of whom are equally corrupt, while many still need to have good motives, real or feigned, presented to them. As we see today, still, there are clear cases, e.g., acts of sheer cruel aggression, in which therefore right is from the beginning wholly on one side, and whatever evil the resentful suffering of evil may eventually generate in members of the right side. There are also conflicts about important things or ideas. In such cases, I am more impressed by the extreme importance of being on the right side than I am disturbed by the revelation of the jungle of confused motives, private purposes, and individual actions, noble or base, in which the right and the wrong in actual human conflicts are commonly involved. If the conflict really is about things properly called right and wrong, or good and evil, then the rightness or goodness of one side is not proved or established by the claims of either side. It must depend on the values and beliefs above and independent of the particular conflict. A judge must assign right and wrong according to the principles which he holds valid in all cases. That being so, the right will remain an inalienable possession of the right side and justify its cause throughout. I speak of causes, not of individuals. Of course, to a judge whose morals ideas have a religious or philosophical basis, or indeed to anyone not blinded by partisan fanaticism, the rightness of the cause will not justify the actions of its supporters as individuals that are morally wicked. But though propaganda may seize on them as proofs that their cause was not in fact right, that is not valid. The aggressors are themselves primarily to blame for the evil deeds that proceed from their original violation of justice and the passions that their own wickedness must naturally, by their standards, have to be expected to arouse. They, at any rate, have no right to demand that their victims, when assaulted, should not demand an eye for an eye or a tooth for a tooth.
All right, we should probably stop there.
Words for
Chris, we should probably stop.
2020.
Yeah, what?
Words for 2020 and 2021.
Yes. Yeah, there's an awful lot of eye for an eye, tooth for tooth.
So it's 3:00. Any last comments on Tolkien is basically debating the idea of quest versus what Auden was saying, right?
John, what were your thoughts?
I agree with the concept that it sounds relevant to today's life.
Okay, so
As a journey?
applicability.
Life is a journey.
Yes, exactly. We are in our own adventure, whether we plan on it or not.
Right, because
Good, Chris.
but Chris,
And there will be a judge to judge right and wrong, or else it's kind of pointless to go on the quest, I suppose.
Like, you mean at the end where Frodo comes back and he's able to, it's seen as the others can recognize that what he did was a right thing, not just because Frodo felt like it, but because it was something with good of others, irrespective of one person.
Yes, objective rightness versus subjective rightness, or true truth, as Schaefer would call it.
On the other hand, the orcs that
But the problem is that, again, if you're talking about flourishing, that there has to be some sense.
Peoples.
There has to be some sense of good, because without that, then everyone could say, "Well,
Yeah, then
why
it's all
can I-
relativism.
why can I not steal from you? Because
Yeah.
it enhances
Moral
my life."
relativism.
Right, right.
Yeah, which is so destructive.
well, the orcs could say that was a decline.
In their
Exactly.
in their
That's that
I'm
moral
playing
relativism.
devil's
No,
advocate.
Yeah, I know.
I know. Well, anything else before we wrap up? I think Corey, you were going to say something.
No. Oh, I'm fine.
Good meeting, everyone.
All right. Well,
Thank you
so
for
glad
coming.
you were all here. We'll be back again in a month, third Saturday
March
of
15th or April 15th, May 15th.
May 15th,
Right,
from 1 to 3 p.m. Pacific time.
Hurrah!
I would like to make a suggestion for a future topic.
Please.
Middle Earth holidays.
Okay.
In the chat room, I put a link to a Tumblr post about holidays in Middle Earth.
Want to be prepared to talk about that next month?
Groundhog Day.
Okay. I wrote a little bit about that because of my paper on trees and talking about
Yes,
Tees Day, Trues Day, Tuesday. Well, that'd
Thank
be
you,
great.
John. That's a
Thanks,
great
John.
topic.
Appreciate that.
Okay.
All right. Remember, TolkienScholars.org is our website. So we can get the meeting notes and previous discussions and links to the videos, etc. Our Twitter is @TolkienScholars. We no longer use Facebook. And on YouTube, it's youtube.com/TolkienScholars. And remember, Tolkien Moot 17 is coming up, and you can now RSVP at tolkienmoot.org. It is
to get in
free,
there.
but limited. As far as the gaming part, the Tolkien Society discussion part and panelists, it's unlimited seating virtual for that. But those who are either going to attend in person or are going to be role-playing game, you need to RSVP to resume because we only have so many tables. But the earlier you RSVP, the more we can plan to get more GMs ready for you. That's all at tolkienmoot.org. And it will be the Glory Days campaign that all the tables
Back in the days, when I was a young
I
lad,
remember when those golden
we had to
glorious
walk up
days.
Middle Tarma, uphill both
Both
ways.
ways, yes. All right, thanks a lot. Wherever you may be well.
Somebody help me.
Namaste. Namaste.
I'm being held in a Middle Earth factory.